Real estate and love letters? Are they a good idea in 2021 or not? In this episode of Just a Tip Tuesday, we're going to dive into love letters and whether or not they're a good idea when it comes to submitting an offer in 2021. But before we do that, a little bit of house cleaning. I'm Chris Nelson with Gemstone Realty, and this channel is all about real estate advice, tips, and tech. So if any of that excites you, you're in the right place. But do me a favor, drop me a comment, hit that thumbs up, consider subscribing, and mash that bell so that you're notified of my future content. So a few weeks back, we spoke about an appraisal situation and how a family was discriminated on by the appraiser when they got there. And this week, although we're not talking about appraisals, we're talking about love letters and how they may play against you when you're making an offer in 2021. So what is a love letter when it comes to real estate? It's not the letter that you used to write back in grade school where you would ask someone whether or not they like you and then leave them the option to circle either yes or no at the bottom of the letter.
Wait a second, we're he-man woman haters. We can't deliver love notes.
A love letter when it comes to real estate is a letter from the buyer that is delivered to the seller that explains to the seller why the buyer is in love with the home. And a lot of the times the buyer really brings in a lot of emotion when it comes to these letters as they try to convey to the seller as to why they should pick their offer. Now in 2021 as well as 2020, we have seen a market that is heavily favored for sellers. Most sellers are selling their home in record time and they're having multiple offers. And by having multiple offers, that means multiple buyers are losing out every time they go ahead and write an offer. So as buyers try to get creative, they feel as though adding this letter gives them a little bit of leverage and or a way to humanize their offer and make that connection with the seller. To be completely honest with you, up until recent, I actually encouraged my buyers to consider a love letter. As a matter of fact, I've even suggested that buyers use their cell phone and record a really short video about why they love the property and to use that to convey their message to the seller. Well, as of recent, things are completely different. NAR, or the National Association of Realtors, has actually been tracking discrimination cases that stem around love letters. And it's crazy because, well, you just don't think by writing a letter to someone telling them why you love their home, you just don't think that that would be a vehicle for discrimination. But yet here we are in 2021 going over the fact that people actually are being discriminated when it comes to these love letters. A lot of times in a love letter, people will tell the seller how they can picture their kids running in the backyard, or how they picture walking their dog in the neighborhood, or how they want to have their cup of coffee on the front porch with their cat. These are all things that most people would really enjoy doing at their new home. And again, you wouldn't think that conveying these things would give someone a reason to discriminate against you. But if you step back and you think about it, what if the person on the other end just lost their dog, or isn't a dog lover, or they're not a cat lover? Any of those things could actually play against you. Keep in mind, people are emotional about their home, and even though they plan on selling it, they want to make sure that the person buying their home is going to love and care for it in the same fashion in which they did. So if you're a dog lover and they're not, that very well could be a reason that they discriminate against you. If you took my advice and sent a video in the past and someone didn't like the color of your skin, well, maybe that's a reason that your offer wasn't accepted. I've been in this industry for going on 20 years, and I remember a situation several years back when I was working with a seller on their home. They actually made a statement to me about how they were moving because the kids in the neighborhood actually get on their nerves and they no longer want to live in that neighborhood because there are just too many kids. They didn't want them running through their yard or playing in the front of their house or any of those things that, well, kids do. So if you're writing a love letter to a seller and in there you reference your kids and the pain point in why they're moving is the neighborhood kids, well, maybe there's a disconnect there. I've even seen letters from veterans. I've seen letters from people who may have some sort of disability. And when you take the script and you flip it and you say that a seller chose to pick a buyer because they're a veteran, or they're a police officer, or a firefighter, or maybe they have a disability, well, then isn't that discriminating against the other people who don't fit that mold? So at the end of the day, I want to make sure that both buyers and sellers are at least aware that love letters may not play into your favor. As a matter of fact, it may even carry some liability and lead to a discrimination case. And not only does that impact the buyer and the seller, but it very well will include the brokerages that are involved, because the realtors in the transaction, one of them delivered it, the other one allowed for their client to read it. So if you're a buyer's agent in this market, although it's a very tough market and we all want to see our buyers succeed, putting together a love letter isn't the way to show a seller that your buyers really want the house. And for a seller, picking a buyer based on the love letter and not the actual information in the agreement of sale is definitely discrimination. If you want to show the seller that you really love their house, in my opinion, the best way to do that is the terms of the offer. Make sure that what you're offering them makes sense. Put yourself in the shoes of the seller in a market where pretty much every home is selling in record time, and ask yourself whether or not your offer, in your opinion, is strong. And if it's not, then go back to the drawing board and make it a strong offer. In this market, you have to put your best foot forward. When working with buyers, I basically use the scenario and ask them, if I were to call you after we submit your offer to tell you that you didn't get your offer accepted, and in the back of your mind, if you're saying that you should have offered $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, whatever that number is, well, you need to have that conversation with yourself before putting that offer in, because the sellers in this market probably aren't going to counter. They're going to go with the offer that makes the most sense to them. And hopefully what makes the most sense to them is dollars and cents, not what is in your love letter. As a matter of fact, hopefully you didn't include a love letter because, well, none of us want any liability and none of us want to be discriminated. With all of that being said, hopefully you found some value in this very short video. Do me a favor and tune in next week for the very next Just the Tip Tuesday with Chris. Until then, take care.